Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. For today's card, I started with 2 pieces of cardstock, which are cut to be 7.5 by 5.5. Now, I definitely have to give a shout out to Jennifer McGuire for today's card because I am using her technique for creating a pop-up shadow box card. In order to create the dimension for this card, I have to add 4 score lines on each of these 2 pieces of cardstock. For this first piece of cardstock, which this is Simon Says Stamps blue-violet cardstock, I'm using my Score Buddy in order to add 2 score lines down both sides of the paper. I add those score lines at the 1/2 inch mark and at the inch mark, and then I just flip it around and do the same on the other side. I did the same exact score lines on the other piece of cardstock, and then I used my bone folder in order to fold along those score lines. And you want to fold those down so that they're kind of zigzagged in an accordion style fold. I set those papers aside and I started stamping the images that are going to go on the inside of this shadow box. These stamps come from the Rainbows and Unicorns stamp set from My Favorite Things, and I stamped those using my Misti Tool onto some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock using my Gina K Designs Jet Black Amalgam ink. I'm going to be coloring these in using my Copic markers, and I do have all of my marker caps off to the side there so that you can see the colors that I'm using. These first 2 markers that I used for my pink areas are actually a little bit too far apart in shade to get an easy blend. So in order to get a nice blend, I had to touch the tip of the lighter color marker to the tip of the darker color marker, and then I colored with that, and that gave me a really nice color for blending. Now you will see that I did add a little bit of coloring to that fairy in the upper corner, but I don't show that on camera, and that's because halfway through coloring it, I decided that I didn't want to use that image, so I don't finish coloring it, and I didn't show any of the coloring process for it in this video. Here you can see with this darker blue color, I did have to kind of do the same thing that I did with the pink sections, where I touched the tip of the lighter color marker to the tip of the darker color marker to get me that blend, but I didn't have to do it quite as much because it wasn't as drastic of a change between the 2 colors. For the coloring on the rainbow and on the unicorn, I kept it pretty simple, and I used a lot of the same colors so that those images would really go together on the card. I find that it's usually a good idea to use a lot of the same colors throughout all of your images for a card because it helps them to go together and it makes the card really cohesive. Now, obviously, that's not something that you can always do, but when you can, it's a good idea to try. For the white clouds and the white unicorn, I decided to do something a little bit different and do my shading with this light pink blush color. Normally when I'm shading a white area, I'll use a really light gray, but for these 2 images, I decided to do something a little bit different because I thought it would be kind of whimsical, and I really liked the way that it came out. In order to blend out this color, I took my colorless blender marker and I colored along the very edge of that pink color until the line kind of faded away into the white. To finish up these images, I took out a darker gray color and I colored in the hooves on the unicorn, and then I used my scan and cut in order to cut these out. Alright, so next I took out the Hero Arts Nested Circle die set, and I cut a circle out of that panel that I scored and folded in the beginning of the video, and then I took this piece of Wild Wisteria cardstock from Gina K Designs, and I cut it down to 5.5 by 5.5, and I cut an even larger circle out of that. At the beginning of the video, I folded a piece of white cardstock to be the back of my card, but I decided to change that out so that both my front and my back panel are the same blue-violet color. And this is mostly so that the panels will match on the side, because I'm actually going to cover up that back panel with a piece of really rainbow patterned paper from Lawn Fawn. This is from the 6x6 paper pad, and I cut it down to be 5.5 by 5.5, and I glued it down using my ATG gun. I picked out a sentiment from the same stamp set, and I stamped it onto a strip of white cardstock using that same Gina K Designs Amalgam ink. I added a little bit of liquid adhesive to the front side of both ends of this sentiment strip, and then I adhered it to the back of this piece of wild wisteria cardstock so that it goes across that die cut circle. I then took that entire panel and I adhered it onto the front panel of my shadow box card. I used the Hero Arts nested cloud die set in order to cut a bunch of clouds out of some vellum. I then took 2 of those clouds and I used Gina K Designs Connect glue in order to adhere them to the back of the front panel so that they look like they're just kind of peeking out from the bottom. Next, I took 2 more of those vellum clouds and I placed them on my work surface. Then I took the rainbow that I colored in and I adhered it on top of those 2 clouds so that they're now connected together behind the rainbow. I then took that entire thing and I adhered it onto the back panel of my shadow box card, and I made sure to only add the adhesive to the back of the rainbow so that it wouldn't show through the vellum. And of course, whenever I have rainbows and unicorns, I have to have some sparkle, so I took out my Wink of Stella glitter brush pen and I went over the clouds on the rainbow and the vellum clouds. I used a white gel pen and I added some highlight lines all the way around the 2 vellum clouds. This next part may be a little bit difficult to see, but I took the unicorn that I colored in and I added some adhesive to the back of it, and then I glued it onto this clear strip of plastic. This piece of plastic is a really thick and sturdy piece of plastic, which I actually cut off of some packaging. Once the glue on the unicorn was dry, I added some glue to the end of that strip of plastic, and then I glued it to the very edge of my front panel. I made sure to hold down that strip until it was mostly dry, and then I took my ATG gun and I very carefully went down that entire flap with adhesive, and then I took the back panel and I lined up the 2 flaps and pressed them together very carefully. You could do this with liquid adhesive, which might make it a little bit easier to move around in case you don't line them up properly the first time. Next, I did the same exact thing on the other side of the card, adhering my front card panel to my back card panel right along that flap on the edge. Now, I wanted to make those outer vellum clouds exactly the same as my inner vellum clouds, so I took my Wink of Stella glitter brush and I went over them, and then I took my white gel pen and I added the same kind of highlights. You can see as I'm doing this that this card design does completely flatten so that you can put it in an envelope. I also added a little bit of Wink of Stella glitter to my unicorn, and then I took some scissors and I very carefully cut that plastic strip so that the end of it is flush to the unicorn. With that, this card is all done, and here's a closer look at the finished card so that you can see all of that dimension. As you can see, when you pull on those sides, that unicorn can move around in there, and also this card can easily stand up by itself, so somebody could keep this and put it on their desk and display it. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this fun shadow box card design. All of the supplies that I used for today's card can be found in the description down below. If this is your first time watching and you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I do new card videos every single week, and I'm going to be back with a new one really soon. Again, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good day today.